Huh. It's been a little while, huh? A little over a year? I don't know. I think. Last thing I remember is exploding, which doesn't exactly happen every day. But now we're back in the swing of things, aren't we, Mario? But you know, being away for so long, it's kind of weird. It sort of leaves a person with all types of questions like, are you coming back? What happened? Why are you so handsome? I can't answer all these questions at once. Give me a break. I almost died. With that being said, did you miss me? Or have I been forgotten? Well, regardless of your answer, you're here now, so why don't you sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. The idea of creating a successful video game is an absolute dream for somebody, I'm sure. Not only did you create a popular video game, but under the right circumstances you can justify turning that game into a full-blown video game franchise. We've all been there before. You try a new game for the first time, you beat it, and then you play the sequel, and then you're hooked, so you play the third installment. Now, there are no more games left and you're sad. So what do you do now? Well, that's the tough part. Sequels aren't guaranteed. The sudden disappearance of a franchise that is loved by fans is all too common. Unfortunately, not every series can have the same popularity as Super Mario, Grand Theft Auto, or Call of Duty. A series like Banjo and Kazooie, though loved by faithful fans, is unlikely to see a new installment anytime soon. But why would a game series be forgotten, you ask? Well, there are a few reasons why. The common cases would include a lack of demand, lack of interest, or straight up neglect of the property. With me being a big Nintendo guy, I'm no stranger to disappointment, and the loss of a beloved franchise is highly possible. Unfortunately, I don't have as many fingers as there are forgotten franchises, so for the sake of time, I chose not 1, not 10, but 4 Nintendo franchises that I would like to see make a return. I do have some rules though. Rule number 1, there has to be at least 2 games in the series, because that's what makes something a series. Rule number 2, the last installment had to be at least 10 years ago. No particular reason, I just think 10 is a fair number. Rule number 3, no region exclusives. At least one game had to have been released worldwide. And rule number 4, one of these rules is an absolute lie. Starting with an obscure series that made its debut in 1999, Custom Robo would go on to release a total of 5 games in the series. Now if you're unfamiliar with Custom Robo, allow me to explain. You see, Custom Robo is a masterpiece. It's an RPG, which might push people who aren't RPG fans away, but as someone who isn't big on the whole RPG genre, this series is worth the play. The battle mechanics aren't what you would expect to see in this type of game. Combat isn't turn-based like in Final Fantasy. Instead, combat is settled by building your own custom robo and fighting in a Colosseum. The first 2 games found their way to the Nintendo 64, being exclusive to Japan. In the year 2002, the Game Boy Advance would join the fun with Custom Robo GX. Sadly for the rest of the world, this entry would also remain a Japan exclusive. By 2004, as luck would have it, the Nintendo GameCube would see a Custom Robo of its very own, and for the first time, the series would see a debut in North America. Yeah! Without saying too much, I absolutely adore Custom Robo on the GameCube, dude. Other than the fun gameplay, the quirkiness and charm is what shines the brightest for me. Maybe I'll cover this series in more detail in the future, or not, but this entry is most certainly worth a try if you can get a hold of a copy. Sad to say, as the old saying goes, all good things must come to an end, and we would see our final Custom Robo in 2006. Not only was this title on the Nintendo DS, gaming's highest selling handheld, but this would also be the first Custom Robo to finally be released worldwide. So what happened? Although there's no direct answer, let me show you what I was able to gather. The custom Robo series was developed by Noise, who was a second-party developer that worked for Nintendo. Unlike other developers, Noise never worked on anything else other than custom Robo. Noise would since leave Nintendo and work for other companies like Bandai Namco and Square Enix, with Japan-only releases and very little success. You know, it's tough to say whether or not the series would make a return, since Noise is the only developer that ever worked on custom Robo. Handing over the IP to someone else might not actually work out well. But PS, please Nintendo, I need a new game. HD remake port, I'll take anything, I need my Robo. Okay, I know I said no region exclusives, but I lied. Star Tropics found its way onto the Nintendo Entertainment System in 1990. The series follows the adventures of protagonist Mike Jones, an ace pitcher who loves baseball, has a yo-yo, you know, white guy things. The series closely resembles The Legend of Zelda, with its action-adventure, top-down style. Star Tropics would see a sequel 4 years later with Zoda's Revenge, Star Tropics 2. Both games found their home on the NES in North America and Europe, and then North America only. How Star Tropics hasn't made a return is beyond me. The series was developed by Nintendo Research and Development Group 3, who would be responsible for games like Pilot Wings, Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, and a whole lot of Virtual Boy games. Nintendo R&D 3 would end up being renamed Nintendo IRD, Integrated Research and Development, who would primarily focus on developing hardware for different consoles. Unfortunately, in 2015, Nintendo IRD would become defunct and would no longer develop anything. This doesn't mean that Nintendo lost Star Tropics though, so any wish to make a third entry is probably just due to neglect or straight up lack of popularity, since Star Tropics never even found its way to the rest of the world. But with that being said, I can still raise my expectations higher and higher by creating a fully unrealistic plan to revive Star Tropics. First, we don't just jump into Star Tropics 3, we have to pace ourselves. We do this in a Nintendo Direct and announce a remaster of Star Tropics Part 1 and 2 in the beautiful style of The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening. This will help draw interest and attention to the series. Immediately after this announcement, we see that Mike Jones will make a return and Star Tropics 3 will now be in development, a la Breath of the Wild 2. And after I've woken up from this dream, I have to face the harsh reality of going back to a world where Nintendo prioritizes crushing my dreams day in and day out. Nintendo sure does love their RPGs, and Golden Sun really shows that. Sadly, Nintendo stopped loving Golden Sun about 11 years ago. The series made its debut in 2001, releasing on the Game Boy Advance. 1 year later, the game would earn a sequel titled Golden Sun: The Lost Age. These two games would each sell over 1 million copies, which is very impressive for a brand new series. As the Game Boy Advance came to an end, we saw the rise of the Nintendo DS. For the DS, Golden Sun made its return in 2010 with Golden Sun Dark Dawn. However, a Dark Dawn it was, and although I couldn't find an exact answer, only around 600,000 copies were said to be sold worldwide. With the shocking decline in sales, this could be a potential reason that Golden Sun may never rise again. But wait a second, what about their developer, Camelot? Well, Camelot is a very busy studio, especially when it comes to working on anything other than Golden Sun. Yes, Golden Sun may be great, however, Camelot is also responsible for the Mario Golf and Mario Tennis games. When taking that into consideration, these Mario sports games come out like every other year and are admittedly much more popular than Golden Sun. But wait another second! Since the Nintendo Switch has already seen Mario Tennis Aces and Mario Golf Super Rush, I think there's a high chance of Camelot starting production on a brand new Golden Sun game. Personally, I think it would be cool to see Golden Sun get a Breath of the Wild treatment. The series can keep its turn-based combat, sure, but to see Golden Sun adopt an open world would be stunning. So with that out of the way, let's move on to our final game. It's a series I've talked about before. Personally, I think it's a fan favorite, but I don't know, Nintendo fans, we suck. Punch-Out is an amazing IP from Nintendo, and believe it or not, it's also one of Nintendo's oldest franchises. The series saw its debut in 1983 with an arcade release titled, you guessed it, Punch-Out. 1 year later, in 1984, after finding massive success, the game saw its first sequel, this time with another arcade machine being called Super Punch-Out. And it wouldn't take much longer for the series to make its way onto the home consoles, with about 4 different releases in total. Mike Tyson's Punch-Out in 1987, Punch-Out featuring Mr. Dream in 1990, Super Punch-Out in 1994, and finally, after a 15-year break, Punch-Out was released to the Nintendo Wii in the year 2009. You see, Punch-Out is an interesting case. It's obvious that Nintendo hasn't totally abandoned the property. For instance, Little Mac, the series' protagonist, was introduced as a playable fighter in Super Smash Bros. For Wii U and 3DS in 2014, and continues to stay on the game's roster in 2018's Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Personally, I think there are a few cases that can be made here. Number 1. In the early days of Punch-Out, the series was being developed by Nintendo themselves. However, the last installment was being developed by Next Level Games. If you're not familiar with Next Level Games, they're the ones responsible for both Mario Strikers games and most recently Luigi's Mansion 3, so who knows what this group is even up to. Number 2. I don't think you can disagree when I say that Punch-Out is a pretty simple game. While that isn't a bad thing, I just feel like the series might need a little bit more added to it. Why not throw in a full-fledged story mode with an overhead, semi-open world for Little Mac to explore? You can add a gym and increase your stats, or maybe play mini-games and increase certain attributes that a boxer would need, like head movement, footwork, and power punches. Alongside this, matchups can still maintain that traditional gameplay style that we've all grown used to. Also, with the Nintendo Switch being big on that whole Joy-Con gimmick, I would see this as the perfect opportunity to mess with the controls and give a similar feeling to Punch-Out on the Nintendo Wii. But as I read this and hear this plan out loud, I realize that I'm only getting my hopes up for inevitable failure, disappointment, and humiliation. Well, there you go. I gotta tell you, while these games are awesome and they definitely had their time to shine, maybe some titles are just better left in the past. Games like F-Zero, Wario Land, and Mother, great games for sure, but maybe at the end of the day they're just not popular enough to return, and us fans just might not have given them enough love. Just kidding, come on Nintendo, get it together! Sometimes your hard work just pisses me off. I mean, Breath of the Wild 2? Super Smash Bros. DLC? Who cares?